Welcome to Indus Special. I'm Ejaz Haider. A U.S. Department of State media note on 2nd July announced the listing of Balochistan Liberation Army as a foreign terrorist organization. The note read, BLA is an armed separatist group that targets security forces and civilians, mainly in ethnic Baloch areas of Pakistan. BLA has carried out several terrorist attacks in the past year, including suicide attack in August 2018 that targeted Chinese engineers in Balochistan, a November 2018 attack on the Chinese consulate in Karachi, and a May 2019 attack against a luxury hotel in Gwadar, Balochistan. In its response, Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a note saying, "We have taken note of the designation by the U.S. administration of the Balochistan Liberation Army as specially designated global terrorist. BLA remains a proscribed entity in Pakistan since 2006 and in recent times has carried out several terrorist attacks in the country. It is hoped that this designation will ensure that BLA's space to operate is minimized. It is important that the perpetrators, organizers, financiers, and external sponsors, including those glorifying these acts of terror against Pakistan, are held accountable and brought to justice." BLA, led by late Khairbakhsh Murray's son, Herbiar Murray, who lives in exile in London, has taken responsibility for some of the most heinous acts of violence in Pakistan, including against non-Baloch Pakistanis residing in Balochistan or working in that province. The designation meets Pakistan's long-standing demand that groups operating in Balochistan and resorting to violence be designated as terrorist organizations. The U.S. action, however, still falls short because there are other groups operating in Balochistan that must be designated as FTOs. Ironically, the designation comes days before a putative ICJ verdict in the case of the Indian spy Kulbhushan Jadhav. Reports suggest the International Court of Justice will announce its verdict in the case on July 17th. India took the case to the ICJ and asked the court to stay Jadhav's death sentence because he was not given consular access and denied the choice of defense. Pakistan cited Clause 6 of the 2008 bilateral agreement between India and itself on consular access, which states that, and I quote, "In case of arrest, detention, and sentence made on political or security grounds, each side may examine the case on its merits," unquote. Jadhav, a serving officer of the Indian Navy working for R&AW, the premier intelligence agency of India, was caught from Balochistan, where, according to his recorded confession, he was running a network of spies and saboteurs. To discuss the issues in detail, we are joined by General Waheed Arshad, former Chief of General Staff of the Pakistan Army. General Arshad, thank you for being on the program. Let me just ask you a very specific question. When you were the CGS and General Kiani was the Chief of the Army Staff, there was a proper policy of integrating the Baloch in the army. And that was clearly because of the trouble in Balochistan. Can you walk us through what exactly were the postulates of that policy?
Yes, first of all, thank you for getting me on this program. I think very important issues you're discussing. As far as the Army's efforts to integrate the Baloch, not only in the Army, but also providing them a lot of support in terms of education, livelihood, and health facilities, is well documented. I think the Army did a tremendous job, of course, with the support of the government. And first of all, we brought the manning level of the Army in sync with the national census, which means that according to the national census, the population of Baloch people would have identical and similar representation in the armed forces as reflected in the census. So we brought it up to that level. And let me tell you that the Baloch have proved to be tremendous soldiers. And they've done well both in the military academy as well as during their tenure in the operational areas. I think they are absolutely wonderful soldiers, both officers and men. Second, the Army did a lot of work in terms of education. We opened up the military college Sui. We did away with the decision of converting Kolu and many other places as cantonments and used those places for education institutions. We opened up a big health facility in Quetta, the heart treatment facility, and also a lot of Army public schools starting from both in Gwadar as well as in other areas of Balochistan. So I think efforts to integrate the Baloch have gone very well, and I think there's a groundswell of support for all these integrating aspects. The problem lies when, the groups like BLA or BRA and other separatist groups which have external support start targeting these innocent people who actually want to support the government and avail these facilities, and they are being supported by their external benefactors. I think that is where the problem lies, and in this respect, this decision by the United States is a very significant decision.
General Arshad, when you say external support, and obviously Pakistan has been saying this for a very long time, and we, as I just mentioned in my introduction, there is Commander Jadhav, who we captured and who recorded a statement saying that he was running a network of spies and saboteurs. So obviously the external support, but this was this intelligence at some level shared with the US and other allied countries when you were the CGS?
Yes, there has never been an occasion, both while I was in service and later on, that such significant aspects of intelligence sharing and information sharing is not done. I think this is an ongoing process, and all these aspects are regularly and periodically shared with our American interlocutors as well as allies of the United States who are there. And just to let you know, I mean, the people who are the external players, and most of them are U.S. allies, the European countries, which we all know where Haider is living. There's a lot of political support for him and his organizations from many countries who are U.S. allies. And I think now there will be a check on that political support, as well as the financing is getting. Having been designated as terrorist organization, I think the government of Pakistan now should be very aggressive in pursuing the case of foreign, the financing, the terrorist financing, the FATF and other international terrorist financing frameworks to make sure that this political support by US allies of the US is not there for BLA and other organizations working, against Pakistan.
So do you think this is also a setback to India, which has obviously been supporting the Baloch terrorist groups? We know that Haider and Bramdag and others have also visited India a number of times. They went even to the Samadhi of Mr. Gandhi and the rest of it. So is this a setback to Indian covert activities in Balochistan?
I think it is not only a big setback to the Indian support to the covert activities in Balochistan and other parts of the country, which they are doing as part of the state policy, but also it takes the wind out of sails of their own. In FATF, Indians have been crying out hoarse and trying to sort of politicize the whole issue of growth in Pakistan, undertaking activities in India, and also trying to link freedom movement of Kashmir as terrorism. So I think when we talk of financing of international terrorist organizations or global terrorism networks, the same kind of pressure that Pakistan used to face in terms of, people of Al-Qaeda and lately, as you've seen, Jaish leadership under the sanctions list, I think the Indians can be put under the same pressure because now they have been supporting those organizations which have now started to be listed as global terrorist organizations.
Absolutely. And I think another significant thing about this particular step by the State Department is that there were lots of US legislators, you might recall, like Rora Baker and others, who were actually doing these seminars and conferences in the US talking about Balochistan and talking about Baloch separatism. I'm assuming that with this step, that activity will have to come to a stop.
I think this should be one of the talking points which the Prime Minister must have when he goes to the United States of, asking the U.S. government to stop this activity of their own legislators supporting a terrorist organization which has been declared as such by the State Department itself.
Correct. Thank you so much. That was General Waheed Arshad talking to us. We are now joined by Senator Anwarul Haq Kakar from Quetta. Senator Kakar, thank you so much for being on the program. We are talking about the designation of BLA as a foreign terrorist organization. It was a long-standing Pakistani demand that the US do this. It has finally been done. But in my introduction before you came in, I said that it still falls short because there are a number of other Baloch terrorist organizations and groups that are operating in Balochistan, and the US and its allies need to designate them as foreign terrorist organizations. Walk us through this problem and also tell me that the propaganda about Baloch, quote unquote, a genocide, how far is that correct?
Thank you so much, Ejaz, for having me on and giving me an opportunity to comment on such an important theme, which is an existential threat to the state of Pakistan. To be honest with you, let me respond to the later part of the question, which I could understand correctly about the so-called Baloch genocide. If we take strictly to the legal term of genocide, it is about the systematic killing on the basis of ethnicity, religion, creed, or class. Unfortunately, this has been done, and the perpetrator of this genocide is, or the responsible for the so-called genocide, are these Baloch so-called militants, which has recently been designated as terrorist organizations. They are the one who have eliminated systematically the non-Baloch populace, the so-called Punjabi-speaking, Urdu-speaking, the so-called settlers, and then the Baloch who do not prescribe to their idea of politics. And that systematic killing has occurred throughout the province, from Gwadar up till Quetta, wherever they have seen racially non-Baloch individuals, they have targeted them, they've eliminated them, they have killed them. So according to that strict definition, they are the perpetrators of the genocide. When it comes to the elimination of these militants, they have been the lawful and legitimate targets before the law enforcement agencies, and they have gone against lawful operations against them. And in some instances, they have been eliminated, and they have been legitimate targets who have raised arms and who have perpetrated violence against unarmed citizenry. So there is no such thing as so-called Baloch genocide.
Okay. Senator Kakar, stay with me. I'm also joined by Dr. Mohammad Faisal, who's the official spokesperson of the government of Pakistan. Dr. Faisal, finally the BLA has been designated a foreign terrorist organization, a long-standing demand by Pakistan, but perhaps it falls a little short in the sense that there are other terrorist groups also that are operating and perpetrating violence in Balochistan. Are we also discussing their designation with the US and its allies, considering that the fat of pressure seemed to be constantly on us, while our concerns weren't really being addressed by the Western countries?
Yes, Ejaz, I think it is an acknowledgement of Pakistan's concerns by the US, the designation of BLA. Terrorism in any form is not acceptable, of course, especially to us and, of course, to the rest of the world. And Pakistan remains one of the biggest victims of terrorism. Commander Kulbhushan Jadhav, who was caught red-handed in Balochistan and who was traveling on an Indian passport in the name of Hussain Mubarak Patel, is an evidence of Indian state terrorism and Indian involvement in Balochistan and the effort to try to encourage subnationals in Balochistan. So I think it's a positive development, and of course we would pursue for a designation of any organization that would be involved in terrorist acts or terrorism in Pakistan.
Absolutely. So now this is significant in the sense that there were US legislators like Dana Arora Bakar and others who were doing seminars and conferences talking about Balochistan and actually implying that Balochistan should gain independence. Perhaps now that the US itself has designated BLA as a foreign terrorist organization, that this particular activity would come to a stop.
We hope so, definitely. there is no such development within Balochistan. You belonging to our region, our country, understand. And any political indications or political moves to the contrary are bound to fail. There are some terror groups which we are trying to address. And, of course, the political solution of any problem in Balochistan is the top priority. That is the aim of this government, to reach out to any people in Balochistan who might have, some discontentment or some concern. So the political solution is supported, no terrorism is supported.
Okay, now that, we have this thing, and there's so much of evidence of Indian state covert activities in Balochistan and elsewhere, also in the erstwhile FATA region. When India says, Pakistan shirks from talking about terrorism, why can't we just turn around and say, well, we don't? You want to talk terrorism? Let's talk terrorism. And here's what you have been doing to us.
This is exactly what we've been saying. Actually, the letter written by Prime Minister Imran Khan on 14th of September last year specifically mentions that we are ready to discuss, of course, Jammu and Kashmir, which is the cornerstone, Siachen and Sir Creek, and separately mentioned that we are ready to discuss terrorism as we are one of the major victims of terrorism. Of course, the letter also mentions people-to-people contacts and trade and all that. But it is India which is shirking from dialogue on all these issues. This includes terrorism. Let's hope that under the new government after the elections, they can be convinced that all problems can be solved by dialogue, conversations. And we definitely want to go down that road.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Mohammed Faisal, the official spokesperson, talking to us. Let me go back to Senator Kakar, who not only belongs to Balochistan, but is also a very close observer of the scene there. And before I went to Dr. Faisal, one very important point that Senator Kakar was raising had to do with the fact that the ethnic genocide allegation is actually something which it's in reality what the Baloch ethnic terrorist groups were doing in relation to the non-Baloch residents of Balochistan. Senator Kakar, now do you think with the designation of BLA as a foreign terrorist organization that the support for our narrative has become easier, we'll be able to essentially tell the truth and give the facts to the world, and the world will be in a better position to actually understand what's happening in Balochistan?
I think so. It would help a lot, in not just in terms of narrative, but rather even countering this menace at the ground level. Because initially you would agree with me that there was a sense of confusion within Pakistan and probably even at international level, that people would try to appease in a manner that they would rationalize this violence, that it has some sort of political roots and it requires to be addressed politically. But now, after the designation of this by the so-called sole superpower, at least the categorization on the basis of violence has been very clear. And one has to realize that you cannot have good violence and bad violence. It has to be treated uniformly. Whether it comes under the name of religion, ethnicity, organized crime, the outcome of that violence is that innocent life is being lost. And the state of Pakistan is responsible ethically, constitutionally, legally to protect its unarmed citizenry. And that citizenry has the prime responsibility. And the state has to shoulder that and come up with to counter the narrative also, and to provide physical security and respond to that challenge in terms of force and kinetic also.
Now, Senator Kakar, what you have said, and I fully agree with that, there's a deep irony here. We talk about presenting our narrative to the outside world, which is all very well, but we've also seen that there are people within Pakistan who have actually been agitating against the state and state's response in Balochistan. How does one counter that? Because as you've very rightly said, that it's state's responsibility to make sure that its citizens are safe and it can provide security to them. Now, why is it that even within Pakistan, the Baloch terrorist groups managed to sell their violence so easily?
In my humble opinion, Ejaz, to be honest with you, it has nothing to do with the romanticism of these Baloch separatists. Rather, it's more deep-rooted within the main discourse between the civil military in this country. In the rest of the country, the civil-military strain and imbalance, wherever it is and for whatever the reasons they are, they probably feel that these separatists has taken upon the might of Pakistan's military. And to stand along with those people has provided some kind of romanticism to them, without realizing that in the process, they compromise the basic core human value, which those militants exploit and destroy each and every movement. The same core human value which they loathe, which they hate, and they, on the racial basis, eliminate and kill human beings without having any right. So that narrow so-called civil-military fight has taken up with them, and they kind of feel that they are on the right side of the history, which unfortunately they are not. The civil-military relationship can be defined, can be explained, can be taken upon with the democratic norms prescribed by the rest of the world. But you cannot just side with jingoistic and militant fascist groups and present the case of democracy like that. Rather, it is antithesis of democracy, antithesis of those human rights values which they claim at least to represent. This is a dilemma in my opinion.
So what about all the efforts that the military has done in Balochistan and continues to do in Balochistan with reference to integrating, with reference to getting the Baloch into a military service, into the service of security forces, police and the rest of it, the Chamalang education program, the various military colleges across Balochistan and the rest of it? All of this is perhaps empirical evidence of the fact that the military has tried to go for a reintegration rather than, dividing the province.
Well, to be honest with you, Ejaz, you're also exposed to the interventions by the military in the socio-economic development arena. I personally feel they have done a fantastic job. The problem lies with people like us, the parliamentarians and the political leadership, that who just, I don't know, for some unexplained reasons, they just shy to admit that positive intervention within our society. Let's take up the recruitment of Baloch youth into non-commissioned position within Pakistan military. I call it a soft coup. Soft revolution, social revolution, in a sense that some around 20,000 individuals have been recruited throughout the province, which means 20,000 families who have got access through their service to the medical facilities, to the educational facilities, to their immediate kith and kin families. So it is social integration, it is integration in terms of service delivery of one reformed and disciplined institution of this country, and they are becoming co-beneficiary in that larger picture of the institution which it is delivering to the rest of its co-participants. So secondly, their intervention in terms of road construction has been marvelous. Their intervention in terms of education, if you go to the far-flung areas of Balochistan and you see frontier course schools, they recruit their own teachers. They are trying to manage all of those salaries within their available resource, and they are doing it as a national duty. And you see a lot of missionary zeal behind such interventions. The issue is no one is admitting, owning that social development intervention, and no one is probably projecting that. That is the pitfall of this whole process.
But here's the thing, finally, Senator Kakar, before I let you go, the thing is that at the end of the day, it's about the aggregation of interests, and that's a political process. That is where you and other parliamentarians come in. So they have to, get their act together if you want to finally have a social and constitutional compact in Balochistan.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I wish I could have synchronized your question into my wish list and could have presented that as a manifesto of the political party I represent. Having said this, at the individual level, you probably would see a lot of voices who would resonate with what you have asked here. But what is required, as you have rightly mentioned, that we need to transfer it into a collective wisdom, into a political manifesto of our parties, and then it should get translated in terms of policy and implementation into the governance model. I have a lot of hopes and huge expectation from the current Chief Minister of Balochistan, Mr. Jam Kamal, who happens to be a visionary individual and who is very well versed with these challenges and who does carry a plan how to go about in this social and political integration of the province, and is someone who understands the fault lines, the dynamics, and who has a plan to respond to. Down the line, after the end of the tenure of this government, I personally think we would be in better position to judge what we have achieved during this journey of our political journey of ours in these 5 years.
Thank you so much. That was Senator Anwar Haqqar talking to us from Quetta in Balochistan. We're going to take a short break, and at the other end of the break, we'll continue with our discussion about this issue and also the upcoming verdict in the Jadhav case. Stay with us. Welcome back to Indus Special. On 2nd July, the US State Department designated the Balochistan Liberation Army as a foreign terrorist organization. Ironically, the designation comes days before a putative ICJ verdict in the case of the Indian spy Kulbhushan Jadhav. Reports suggest the International Court of Justice will announce its verdict in the case on July 17th. India took the case to the ICJ and asked the court to stay Jadhav's death sentence because he was not given consular access and denied the choice of defense. Pakistan cited Clause 6 of the 2008 bilateral agreement between India and itself on consular access, which states that, and I quote, in case of arrest, detention, and sentence made on political or security grounds, each side may examine the case on its merits, unquote. Jadhav, a serving officer of the Indian Navy working for RNAW, was caught from Balochistan, where, according to his recorded confession, he was running a network of spies and saboteurs. To discuss the issue of the designation of BLL as a foreign terrorist organization, also the Jadhav case, I have with me Ambassador Zamir Akram, who joins me from Islamabad, and Barrister Abubakar Molla, who joins us from London. Let me begin with Barrister Molla. Barrister Molla, give us a sense of where do you think the ICJ verdict is likely to go?
The matter is sub judice. Once a matter is sub judice, I cannot dwell into this matter so much. But I can make comments on the legality of the application of India, whether Pakistan has breached Article 36 of the Vienna Conventions. However, Pakistan's argument is that due to the bilateral agreement of 2008, they have complied with the rights given and protected under bilateral agreement of 2008. What I have seen, the case, that the Vienna Conventions, I think India has used this tool to just to delay the judicial process. And I think that there is no merit of Indian claims and Indian application to release their citizen to back to the India. There is no merit. Pakistan is a sovereign country. Pakistan has all the right to prosecute a citizen who is not the citizen of Pakistan or even the citizen of Pakistan who has committed a prima facie case. And upon the facts submitted by the Pakistan in the court, and there is a prima facie case, and India has not objected that there is no prima facie case. All India has said is that Pakistan has breached the Vienna Conventions. So there is not much merit by the Indian side that there is no merit in the case against the accused. All they say is that because of the breach of the Vienna Conventions. So what about the main core of the Vienna Convention is whether human rights was violated or not, whether rule of law and the due process was observed or not. And India has not objected and raised the issue properly with evidence that Pakistan has not observed the rule of law and the due process. All their claim is that the Vienna Convention's Article 36 has not been followed up.
Okay. Ambassador Akram, the designation of BLA as a foreign terrorist organization, a long demand by Pakistan, that's finally happened. Do you think it also exposes the Indian covert state activity in Balochistan and the fact that now the US legislators like Rora Bakar and others who have been doing seminars and conferences talking about Balochistan independence, that's the kind of activity that will have to come to a stop now?
Well, that's what one would expect if the U.S. Legislators are going to respect the U.S. government's decision to designate BLA as a terrorist organization. But knowing Rora Bakar and people like him, I'm not quite sure that they will do that. In any case, the more important thing is that the U.S. government's decision is to designate BLA as a terrorist organization, which we have been trying to convince them to do so for an extremely long time. I was myself involved when I was an ambassador to the UN in Geneva in taking this case up with the Swiss authorities and with others who had given sanctuary to some of the BLA leaders who are still there. Absolutely. So I think this will bring about a change in the attitude of the organizations like the UNHCR and others who have been approached for this kind of treatment by some of the leading BLA operatives.
So now that BLA has been designated as a foreign terrorist organization, what would be the status of Herbiar Murray? Can we ask for his extradition now?
We should. That should be the logical course of action. In fact, some time ago, we had pursued also with the Interpol, but somehow the previous governments had withdrawn that notice that the Interpol had issued. And now I think our hands are further strengthened, legally speaking, to take this case up with Interpol and with the other relevant international organizations dealing with counterterrorism.
So we now have the space to become more aggressive with our efforts. Thank you so much. That was Ambassador Zamir Akram talking to us. Back to Barrister. Barrister Molla, I recall that one of the things that Pakistan had said to India was that we can give consular access to Jadhav on the merits of this case, but India first has to help us with further investigating all the activities that he was doing in Balochistan. And to the best of my knowledge, India did not really respond to that request.
Yes, that is right. India has not cooperated with the Pakistan authority for the investigation. That is completely true. And India has not claimed that they have cooperated with Pakistan authority. All are they saying is that accused should be freed and sent back to India. And alternatively, they are saying that there should be retrial by the competent authority outside of military court. If the International Court of Justice found that the due process was not observed and his human rights was violated, and there can be retrial. But by no means that he will be sent back to India. No, because there is a prima facie case, and India has not objected, and there are clear evidence against him. And now it is the court to decide whether there should be retrial or not, whether due process has been observed or not.
So tell me, legally speaking, because the initial prayer was for consular access, has India been adding to what it now prays before the International Court of Justice?
Yes, they have made a couple of alternative proposals, submissions to the court, not only about that access to the victim, access to their citizens. That is not the only application. They have made a couple of applications. Once that they have made an application to the International Court of Justice, the decision by the Army Court has to be completely scrapped. Alternatively, if it is not scrapped, there should be retrial in the normal court. That is their, two submissions, alternative two submissions.
So this is, of course, then more than the initial prayer. So is the court...
Yeah, that is...
Yeah, so would the court actually go beyond the initial prayer into, looking into the merits or otherwise of these proposals?
In Pakistan has made their final oral submissions, and India has made their oral submissions. On the oral submissions, India has added a couple of points. There, as I mentioned, India has said that not only that he should be given only consular access. No, that is not the only submissions made by India. They have made a couple of submissions as well. And there, as I said, their important submission is that he should be given, not only given consular access, he should be, if he is found guilty, but then his sentence should be immediately postponed. He should be given due process, and alternatively he should be tried. If the International Court of Justice does not accept the application that he should be sent back, that he should be at least tried in the ordinary court of Pakistan. They are not saying that only consular access is their only demand. No, that is not the case.
Okay, so finally, quickly, because I have to wrap up, give me a sense of how states deal with cases of espionage in terms of the trial of captured spies and saboteurs.
Yeah, Pakistan is a sovereign country, and Pakistan has got all the right to prosecute and bring someone to justice if someone has committed a crime in their territory. Whether if that person maybe is a Pakistani citizen or not a Pakistani citizen, if the crime is committed inside Pakistan, Pakistan has all the right based on evidence. India has not said that their citizen has not committed any crime. All India claim is that their citizen was not given consular access, and the human rights was not observed, due process was not observed. That is their claim. As I said, according to international law, Pakistan has all the right to prosecute and bring someone to justice based on evidence, based on prima facie case.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Barrister Abubakar Molla talking to us about the Jadhav case. This is all from Indus Special for this week. We shall see you next week. Until then, it's goodbye.